Welcome to February's AnimChallenge review. My name is Kevin Parry. I'm a stop-motion animator. I've been in the animation industry for about 10 years now. I worked on a number of feature films at Leica, and for the past few years, I've been making my own stop-motion animation and visual effects for social media. So February's challenge was stop motion, and the winner of that challenge is Rodrigo Coronado, who did a wonderful Toy Story inspired stop motion animation. And we're gonna take a look at it. We're gonna break it down and really dive in frame by frame. So let's jump right into reviewing Rodrigo's animation. So the first thing I wanna do is just watch it over and over and kind of get the big picture of the animation. So looking at it as a shot, as a whole, before we get into the tiny details. So let's take a look. So it's a really fun piece. It's obviously inspired by popular apps like TikTok and the people who dance on those apps. So we have Woody from Toy Story doing a TikTok dance with the surprise ending that Buzz Lightyear is watching this on the Toy Story world version of TikTok. So as a whole, it's super fun. We get to enjoy Woody performing a real world dance that I guess teenagers do. So it's kind of bringing that TikTok world into Toy Story. So we get to see, Woody's proportions and his frame performing that dance. So that's super fun to see. And then we get the added punchline of Buzz Lightyear liking the post. And what I like about Buzz at the end is that it kind of opens this world of, what does social media look like in the Toy Story universe? So the Buzz Lightyear bit at the end is super quick, but it does kind of, it kind of kicks off our imagination into, what's the modern version of Toy Story? Overall, there's a really nice rhythm to the performance. So it's not just this dance where, everything just keeps moving and moving. There's movement, pose, movement, pose, movement, pose. So there are these holds built in that, give the performance a nice rhythm. So you are able to enjoy these poses, and that adds some clarity to the dance. And I think one of the most important things in this performance is capturing that kind of ragdoll quality that Woody has. We've seen that throughout all the movies. And I think Rodrigo is taking dances from real life and interpreting them through animation into that ragdoll quality. So a lot of these movements, and when I get into breaking down the frames, I'll point this out. But a lot of these movements, he's leading with the elbows. So elbows are going first. So, he's not dancing and leading with the hands. It's often leading with the elbows. So you get this kind of toy ragdoll feel, which is incredibly important to Woody as a character. Some of the best physical comedy in Toy Story comes from treating Woody like a rag doll. And I think Rodrigo's doing a great job of interpreting these dances, as that rag doll Woody character. Okay, so let's dive into this piece of animation frame by frame. We'll do some draw overs. And bear with me with the drawing aspect of this. I'm a stop motion animator, so I'm much more used to working with puppets and physical objects. So my draw over capabilities aren't the greatest, but I'll give it a shot. So yeah, let's start from the beginning. Let's look at this leaping motion. So we're working here at 12 frames per second, which you really have to consider the kind of pose to pose quality of 12 frames per second, especially during fast movements. So on this jump up, it's looking great. There's some nice poses in here. Yeah, overall it's looking good. I would have maybe dragged one of the arms behind. So let's take a look here. So I'll frame through. You know, I probably wouldn't have had the hips this high on this frame, just because this leg goes from bent to straight. And this is kind of saying this is the frame that we jump off the ground. Whereas, you know, if this frame taking off, the hips would have been down here and the leg would have been bent like this. And then the next frame we're off the ground. So you would really feel that shape change of bent to straight up in the air. So I think having the legs straight right at the touching the ground frame doesn't help with the power going up. It'll feel like your leg goes straight and then you kind of just hop off the ground versus launching yourself off the ground. So yeah, dragging the arms behind. So I typically try to find one little interesting quality per frame during movements on 12 frames per second. So rather than boom, hitting this pose up top, I might have, so this is a great pose. So I might have left all this stuff here. Nice straight leg, bent leg here, this arm up here. I might have done, you know what? I guess it's kind of preference, but I might have done, yeah, maybe this arm up here where it is. And maybe this arm could have lagged behind down here so that the next frame, it pops up here. So you at least get one kind of accent piece at the top of the jump rather than just boom, hitting the pose as a whole. And it's kind of those little details that overlap that give it kind of texture and a bit more excitement in the frames. But yeah, there's some great stuff happening here in this jump. So leap into the air. You can see that the legs here start coming down. So the legs are moving down while the arms are still traveling upwards. So that's a really good quality. So you get that arms floating while the body then intends to start coming down. So that's some great texture in the animation there. Yeah, I don't know if this hand here needed to do such an aggressive move because it doesn't really do much. Because, yeah, you want your eye to really focus on this foot coming down. So when I'm thinking through animation straight ahead like this, I'm thinking what increment or movement is the star of the show? So really in this frame, it should be the foot because we've leapt in the air. Now this foot needs to kind of strike the ground. So I wouldn't have made this left arm here so exciting. And I know it works into the next pose here, but I would have kind of kept it a bit more neutral just to let that foot coming down be the star of the show. But you do work into a nice pose here. This is a really great kind of, you really feel that line of action in this pose. And stepping through this, you really do feel that. So you have this kind of like shape here that works and starts to straighten out. Nice curve here, nice curve into a straight. And then you feel that shape kind of break. So you do have some great line of action stuff happening here. So I'm just looking at the legs here on this second hop. It gets a little bit muddy. I think one of the things you could have done is anticipate with the silhouette. So before this leg takes off, I would have maybe twisted it this way, just so you feel some kind of anticipation going into it. But nice curve or bent leg to straight here. That's a great line of action going through here. But yeah, twist here, and then you could have really popped this leg up here and kept it kind of up here. But yeah, this foot, I think down here gets a little kind of floaty and muddy. And I'm curious if Rodrigo used video reference for this. So looking at real people performing this dance. Because I think I've had this a lot. When you watch video reference and you translate it into 12 frames per second, you can start to get a little muddy if you follow it too closely. And I think a product that is, you know, when you're on 12 frames per second, if you start to do the half points of actions, it gets a little muddy as well. So you do kind of want to do more of that pose to pose where you're, you know, you have your pose, and you're kind of favoring, you know, a third over here and a third over here. You're kind of getting closer to the ease in and outs versus, you know, doing things halfway. So I think this action is feeling a bit of that kind of halfway versus, you know, striking confident poses. But there's a lot of great arm stuff happening here. Lots of ragdoll qualities, like I mentioned. So this arm here, you can see is being led by the elbow, which is great. Same up into here, elbows are leading. Yeah, so I think this is another case of too many interesting things happening at once. So here I would have, you know, this is kind of like a rodeo dance. So stomps are super important. So I would have let the stomp here be the star of the show. But you have this arm kind of doing something more exciting. And that might be a product of looking at the reference. So I would have let it, you know, stomp, let that be the star of that frame, and then boom, the next frame, the arms kind of take over as the exciting element. Let's watch this little bit where he kind of scoots doing this move. Boom. Okay, so there's a lot of clarity in the feet here. There's like stomp, slide over, stomp, slide over. Yeah, so I think I would have got maybe just a bit more clarity in the arms and the hands. So let's take a look at that. I can draw over on this. Okay. Yeah, so let's take a look at this arm here. So we have it, you know, like this. Boom, it hits this pose here, which is great. And then the next frame, it's way up here. So you can kind of see how drastic those 3 frames are versus, you know, I might have on the next frame kind of favored it back down here so that this hand kind of lags behind before popping back up. You know, yeah, this position here is just kind of hanging out on its own. So it's not being eased into or eased out of. It's kind of just popping down. So I would have watched out for a little bit more clarity in the arms during this movement. This stuff's great though. This is a great pose. This kind of ragdoll, the hands are dragging behind. You're twisting the back arm so you really get a good silhouette there. That's super fun. Yeah, so I think just looking at this, so this arm here, yeah, hitting this pose, I might have worked it. So straight ahead, you have to really see where you're going. So knowing that this arm is coming behind, this frame here, yeah, I would have had the arm maybe really pull back and you just see a hand here, and maybe even like a tickle of an elbow back here. So you feel it going backwards. So right now it's going from forward and then just boom behind and then back forward. So living in each, these arms are happening really quickly, but living in each pose for at least like 2 frames, you know, probably could have helped overall. I'm not saying it's bad, it looks great, but these are just subtle ways to improve when you're working at 12 frames per second. Yeah, so here's a great example of what I'm talking about with texture. So this whole action here, you're letting the arms be the star of the show, which is great. And you're dragging the elbow or leading with the elbows, which is fantastic. So you can see this foot is only moving a little bit. And even the next frame, you're popping these arms up and the foot is kind of easing out of position. So, you know, you're not letting that foot take over. You're letting those arms be the star of that action. And this is great too. This little hop here is super fun. So you're letting kind of just the movement of the leg do the hop. So it's not a launch off the ground. It's just a little swing and a whoop. It's just picking up the weight. So that's really good. It's almost as if, you know, those arms are swinging through and they're just lifting the body off the ground a bit. So really clear there. So let's look at this transition from this pose into this dance here. So we're going from this pose up here into this dance. So I think looking at this dance, it's a very knee-heavy dance. So the knees are kind of leading a swing side to side, accented by these arms. So I think this transition could have been a bit stronger, you know, knowing where you're going. So rather than leading this transition with the head and the hands coming over, you know, I might have, so you have this strong pose here. Get the right frame here. Okay. Yeah, you have this strong pose like this. And you basically, you're breaking that into the next dance, which is this nice S curve here. So you're going from this big C curve into this S curve. So rather than just tilting all this forward like this, I might have started to break the knees. So have this knee kick in, because the knees are going this way, right? So you don't have to do much with this one, but breaking this knee would have really, you know, kind of pushed those knees. So you're going into the next pose. And even, yeah, swinging the hips. And I would have maybe left this head behind. So it's kind of this ragdoll of everything's leading except the head. And because you're going into this very quick arm change here, you know, you could have maybe just done something like that, where it's pulling in, rather than swinging this hand outward here. And the same thing with this arm, rather than, you know, tilting everything forward in a locked kind of way. You know, this arm could have broken away from the silhouette here just to give it some organic shape change. Yeah, and then this dance here with the knees and the hands, I might have just watched out for the overall increments, so hitting pose to pose. So just watch the head here. So the head starts here. And, you know, next frame it pops over here. And then it kind of hits a wall and just goes a little vertical, but then pops over here. So just watching for smoothing that stuff out. So it's like, it's not like, not doing kind of random increments. And that's all part of stop motion. It's just knowing where you're going and how to get there smoothly. But overall, this is a very clear dance. Fun movements on the legs and the arms. And yeah, doing this, hitting the pose and doing this ragdoll thing with the head is pretty fun. So well done on that. Yeah, this is a good example of what I meant by leading into the next pose with a bit of anticipation. So in animation, we often think of anticipation as the opposite direction. So if I'm going to throw a ball, I would anticipate this way and then throw it. But anticipation could also mean just a little action to kind of trigger that something's going to happen. And especially in 12 frames per second stop motion. So this is a good example of that. So if you look at your pose here, you you're keeping everything generally the same, but you're just kicking out the leg. So that little step there is the star of the show for that frame. And it's hinting, that he's going to do this side step. So that's a really good kind of small anticipation into the action. And I do really like that, you're going everything down here, and then the arms are popping outwards. So they're kind of contrasting the overall action. So that's great. Here I might have textured the arms a bit more. You have them both kind of pop up pretty drastically together. Versus, I think you could have left this arm dragging behind, and then the next frame pop it up and then settle it on its own. So, rather than doing together like this, you could have done 1, 2, and that might have given it more of a texture on that action. I know there's the limitations of the toy that you're animating with, but this one at the end here is a really, really good pose. So it's super fun. So you have this kind of cowboy, knees out stance, combined with this ragdoll broken elbows look. So this pose is classic Woody. It's like he's riding a ragdoll riding a horse. It's a ragdoll cowboy. That's Woody. So a great pose for him here. The first one you hit, you might have wanted to thrust these hips a bit more forward. So these hips probably could have come forward a bit more like this, and really throw that head back. So really accent that C curve with those broken arms flying behind here. Yeah, and I think this footwork here is a good example of what to do on 12 frames per second. So you're stepping here, you're locking the foot for 2 frames, and then on the 3rd frame, you're easing out of it, pop over, and then ease into a settle on the foot. So that's really great work for 12 frames per second. All right, and then Woody, this transitions into the phone gag at the end with Buzz Lightyear. Great timing, leaving 3 or 4 frames of Buzz not doing anything, so that we can register the cut. And yeah, this is great work on Buzz, even though it's a very quick action. You're leading with the head and the body. So he's walking into it, lifting up his hand, and then tap, tap, liking the video on TikTok. All right, let's take a look at the making of short clip that Rodrigo put together. This is well put together. It's obviously composited together. He used the Toy Story bedroom, so I wouldn't expect him to have a physical set of Andy's bedroom. So it came together really well. But I can comment on the animation of Woody and how that could have been kind of better managed to make the editing and compositing probably much easier. So let's look at this raw animation of Woody. So you can see that Rodrigo used, he has a black floor here and a white wall up here, and that's going to make it extremely difficult to key Woody from the footage to make the background transparent. So I totally would have used a green screen here. Or if you don't want the green spill to kind of get all over the toy, the light, the green light bounce, I would have at least used all black for this background and not split it into white and black. So that would have been step 1, is maybe just all black behind Woody. And let's take a look at this rig holding up Woody. So this is a stop motion rig. Okay, so looking at this rig that's holding up Woody, let's say that all of this background here would have been black, so just completely black behind Woody. One easy thing you can do is this point here where the rig meets the toy or the puppet, is to keep a piece of tape on it at that contact point. So, let's say you have your puppet object here, right? And then your rig is supporting the object here. If you have this black background behind everything like this, then you have this silver rig that's popping, and it's going to be hard to cut that silver away from the edge of the puppet. So if you just put a piece of black tape on the rig, then it at least matches the background, and it'll be a cleaner silhouette. And it might make your life easier frame by frame to remove that rig. So that's one thing you could have done. But you know what? He did a great job. I don't know how he cut this toy out, if it was hand by or frame by frame hand erasing. But I definitely would have had one color. And looking at the CG environment, fantastic job. I don't know how to create CG environments, so this was Woody's bedroom with the interactive bed bouncing around. Is fantastic. Great work. Looking at the the fact that Rodrigo did bounce the bed a bit, I wonder if he could have translated Woody's footage as well, so you feel those feet spring into the bed. That's a very subtle note, though. And let's look at Rodrigo animating Woody. So he has this time lapse of him animating the Woody toy. Okay, we'll pause that. Yeah, you can see if I zoom in on his Woody puppet here. I don't know if this peg was on the toy or if he glued it on, but incredibly smart. Yeah, so you would just have to glue on this peg here. And then the stop motion rig with the clip just clips onto it, and you can actually kind of spin the toy around that peg. So super clever. In my experience, the easiest way to rig a puppet is usually the best. So you don't want to overcomplicate things. Sometimes you get involved with you're doing glues and magnets around things, and a peg in the back with a clip, very easy, super controllable. So really smart rigging the puppet that way. Okay, so I'm gonna pop back into the making of here for a second because I just noticed. So you can see that, Woody, his silhouette is here. And this rig is really interfering here. So as much as possible when you're animating stop motion with rigs, let's say Woody's silhouette is like this. You want to have that rig kind of perpendicular to the surface here, rather than riding along and cutting through the silhouette. So as much as possible, get that rig out here, so you don't have to deal with it as much in post-production. Okay, so one final note on the compositing of this animation is just to be 1% more careful with the masking. So this frame here, you can see that there was a bit of the wall left behind in the negative shape of the arm here. So when you're compositing stop motion, just be extremely careful, and you have to frame by frame really analyze stuff. So that little negative shape there kind of slipped through the cracks. So just watch out for that. And in my opinion, I think the shadow that Woody's casting is a bit heavy-handed. I might have dialed that back a bit. It's this kind of big oval shape with a really hard edge. I might have just softened it up so it was less of a thing. I think with big, heavy, hard edge shadows, they're there right in your face, and you have to get them perfect. Versus if you just hit a soft kind of ambient lighting shadow, that might have not called as much attention to itself. Okay, I think that's a really good place to leave this review. Overall, Rodrigo did fantastic work. I can get as deep into the review of the frame by frame as much as possible. But in the end, Rodrigo did some great animation, really handled 12 frames per second well, and captured Woody's essence with that ragdoll cowboy feeling. So I would say it's very successful. My review of, leave the hands here back a little bit, hold this pose slightly more, that's all subjective. In the end, if it's entertaining, if it's clear, and if it captures the character really well, it's super successful. So I would say very successful animation. Great work, Rodrigo. Congratulations on winning February's AnimChallenge Stop Motion Challenge.